Sahana bhavatu Sahanau bhunaktu Sahaviryam karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
We will chant chapter 4, verses 26 to 30. Shrotraadhinendriyananye samyamagnishu juhvati shabdadhin vishayananye indriyagnishu juhvati sarvanindriyakarmani pranakarmani chapare atma samyama yogagnau juhvati jnana dipite dravya yajnastapo yajnaha yoga yajnastapare swadhyaya jnana yajnascha yataya samshita vrataha apane jughvati pranam prane panam tatha pare pranapanagati rudva pranayama parayanaha apare niyataharaha pranan praneshu juhvati sarvepyete yajnavidaha yajnakshapita kalmashaha.
So the context of 12 yajnas we stepped into last week is one of the subtlest themes in Vedanta, in the Gita, which could be compared to the Upanishads. The spiritual practices are referred by one word, sadhana. The word sadhana means spiritual practice. The world is full of practices, but spiritual awareness is what a person needs. Practice is physical. Awareness changes the thought. Practice or action cannot change the thought. It is awareness that changes the thoughts, that brings spiritual transformation. So there are two types of personalities in the world. One called as extroverts. Extroverts are those whose mind is continuously preoccupied with the world. Preoccupation with the world is because of desires and attachment. So it is desires and attachment that makes a person go to the world again and again. So when you take in this knowledge, it should result in reduction of these two. Desires and attachment. The common concern is, without desires and attachment, how can we live? What will life be? In order to function, you need conviction and identification. Desire and attachment are personal. Conviction and identification are global or universal. So desires and attachment means personal. I want this, I want that. For what? For my pleasures, for my peace, for my appeasement. What happens to others, I'm not bothered. And I want this for myself, my wife, my son, my husband, my daughter. This is attachment. So the entire scope of life is restricted to oneself and one's immediate unit. We don't see anything more. So we are not living in the world, we are living in our mind. And we expect the entire world to fit into our mind. This is the reason for all the stress. You understand the connection? I want these things. For what? For myself. And I want it for myself, my partner, my family, my son, my daughter. Maybe maximum is my community. So the entire world is meant to fit into my mental frame. This is the attitude with which we live life. And we act based on it. We act to accomplish it. So knowledge helps a person realize the absurdity of this. So it transforms your outlook towards life. Whatever is your swadharma, whatever is your nature, you attribute it to accomplish a larger purpose. You don't restrict the scope of action to what it gets you. You expand your scope of action to what can be delivered. This is called conviction. This is called ideal. So in terms of action, it is ideal. In terms of intellect, it is conviction. In terms of mind, it is identification. You identify with a larger circle. Such a person is not someone's mother. Such a person is called Mother Teresa. I'm just giving an example. Such a person is not somebody's father. He is called as father of the nation, because he has identified with the purpose of entire nation. So the motherliness in her made her identify with all children. So extroverted people operate with desires and attachment. As you gain knowledge, the desires and attachment bothering the mind reduces. If it doesn't reduce, we have not gained any knowledge. It is just books, it's just words, it is just intellectual curiosity. So having gained the knowledge, offloaded desires and attachment, one becomes an introvert, which is a very, very high state of spiritual accomplishment. 3 classes we attend and ask how to practice. It doesn't happen that soon. Driving a car takes a few months. 1 full year it takes for you to get your license. This is only driving the car. You're going to drive your whole life towards the ultimate. But every bit of knowledge makes a difference. So introverted is one in whom the direction is strongly set towards divinity. Such a person is free from pressures of mind. Pressures of mind or desires and attachment. So mundane terrestrial desires and attachment no longer pressurize the person. How does such a person practice spiritual? How does such a person take to spiritual practices is what is given out here. So why I am giving you the briefing is, this is not applicable to any one of us. What is applicable to any one of us is chapter 2, chapter 3. But this is loftier thought, the loftiest thought that human intellect can conceive, which helps us to fix us a direction. Now why study then? We don't study the Upanishads on a weekly basis. It is taken up only as a retreat, 3 days, 2.5 days, because it can't be delivered on a weekly basis. Gita is not an inferior text, but we still can manage if you put in the effort. By hearing, you will get a feel-good factor, nothing else. By reflecting, you will gain knowledge. So the 12 yajnas act as the direction to navigate our personality. So it is introverted sadhana. Spiritual practice is not part-time pastime. 25 translation. Spiritual practice is not part-time pastime. It is full-time awareness of truth. So how do you practice this full-time awareness of truth? When you go to a church or a temple or a mosque, you are reminded of God. When you smell agarbatti, you are reminded of God. 1 hour before the Gita class, think about your thoughts in the mind. So the thoughts are different. So you say, don't irritate me, don't agitate me, I'm getting into a class. I'm studying the Gita. And if you really get immersed in the Gita, after that, someone comes and talks to you, you say, let's talk about all this tomorrow. I'm in a different thought association. I'm in a different mood. So before the class few minutes, after the class few minutes, but how to retain the spiritual awareness, the spiritual thought association all through life, 24/7. Again, the common understanding is, I can't think of God and I can't think of world at the same time. How can you think of driving on the highway and think of God at the same time? It is not thinking of God, it is being aware of one's purpose. How to be aware is what he is giving here in these 12 yajnas. So 25th verse, he says, some yogis perform sacrifice to gods. Yogis means those whose focus has shifted towards yoga, uniting with the self, finding the self. What is that self? What is Brahman? What is Atman? What is God? What is called as Father in heaven? What does the word Allah mean? When these questions preoccupy your thoughts, you are a yogi. So some yogis perform sacrifice to gods, means those yogis who are not highly introvert, who are still extrovert, who are working in the world, don't work for immediate results. So whatever they work for, it has been converted into a divine thought association. Person seeking wealth worships Lakshmi. The person seeking knowledge worships Saraswati. This is what he means by gods and goddesses. So different gods and goddesses created to help attune the mind. Some amount of daring rationality is required to think. Are there so many gods and goddesses? Where are they? What is the exact number? What is their height? What is their weight? What is their skin color? What is their nationality? Are they Indian in nature, gods and goddesses? So when you ask these questions and don't get answers, rational thinkers turn atheists. They say this is all nonsense. The whole thing is nonsense. They are right. It is nonsense without completing the picture. It is perfect sense when the picture is completed. So human mind is going towards various aspects in the external world. You can't stop the mind going into the world and shift it towards God. That's not possible. So wherever their mind went, they planted gods and goddesses. This is the initial sadhana. The initial sadhana is to coat your mind with a divine flavor. And then the next line he says, others perform sacrifice by offering sacrifice itself into the fire of Brahman. So first type of yogis are thinking about gods. They are not thinking about Brahman. Brahman singular. Gods in plural. So you are interested in wealth. You are worshipping Lakshmi. I am interested in knowledge. I am worshipping Saraswati. Another person is interested in health. He worships Hanuman or whatever. So innumerable gods and goddesses created to make the mind attuned with divinity in whatever one seeks. So you are not told to abandon your pursuit. You are told to accommodate the thought of divinity in it. So what happens because of that? When you think of God and goddesses, automatically your mind becomes purer. At least someday in life, it should occur. All the time I am praying to God for myself. All the politicians go to Tirupati. One fellow wins the election. Nobody thinks. Those who lose think that that fellow must have done something more. They find out who his astrologer is and try to do what he does. They don't see that it is service that gets you title, not prayer. Prayer will not get title. There are temples where you have to bid to become the chief priest. The chief priest is praying all the time. He loses the bid. Little bit of pigeon brain is enough to understand prayer doesn't get anything. It is your action. But all the politicians go and pray. I want to become chief minister. I want to become prime minister. Someday the thought will occur to that fellow. What am I wanting to become for? Just to amass wealth, just to collect power, just to control the state, not for serving it. So the mind has to lose its extroverted, selfish stigma. That was the purpose of planting a god or goddess. Others sacrifice, offering sacrifice. Others perform sacrifice by offering sacrifice itself into the fire of Brahman. Sacrifice itself means the very capacity to make choice is dropped when the last thought snaps. When the person is in the seat of meditation, when all desires and attachment is gone, what remains is the last thought, the thought of God. So that thought itself is sacrificed into the fire of Brahman. What remains is the consciousness, Brahman. So 25th verse talks about two yajnas. The yajna of relative ideal, the yajna of absolute ideal. So you can call yourself spiritual if you have one of the two ideals, relative ideal or absolute ideal. Practice of meditation, chanting mantra, silencing the mind, you can take up if you have the absolute ideal of realization. Now, who amongst you has the ideal of realization? It's a joke. Just a thought for us. So for all of us, what is convenient, what is realistic is relative ideal. Relative ideal is, I know engineering, I know medicine, I know business, I know music, I know mathematics, I know nothing about myself. I know nothing about how this personality operates. I know nothing about the world. I know where to shop what I want. What I want from Costco, what I want from Walmart, what I want from Amazon, I know. But what is the world all about? Who decides that there should be so many species of animals? Who decided that the human mechanism should be like this? I know nothing about the design of world. So let me know something more about life than just making a living. This is called self-development. So 25th verse talks about two ideals. One is self-development, the other is absolute ideal of self-realization. 26.
Shrotraadhinindriyananye samyamagnishu juhvati shabdadin vishayananye indriyagnishu juhvati
Shrotraadhinindriyananye samyamagnishu juhvati Shabdhadin Vishayanyanye Indriyagnishu Juhvati. Translation: others offer hearing and other senses as sacrifice into the fires of restraint. Others offer sound and other sense objects as sacrifice in the fires of the senses. What do you understand? But once it is explained, it is so easy. That is why I say the whole thing is full of jargons. Fires of senses, fires of restraint. What is senses? What is restraint? What is fire that he is talking about? So go back to the basics. The word yajna, the Havan ritual, three things you have to remember, has a trough, has a container in which the fire is lit. So there is a pilot fire into which various offerings are thrown. And as you throw the offering, the fire consumes the offering and swells. The fire swells. So the swelling of fire is considered as God invoked. People worship. Absolute God, Brahman, is inconceivable by the intellect. It is incomprehensible by the senses, imperceptible. So you need an idol to attune to the ideal. Ideal is God. Idol is fire. Fire is one of the idol. The cross or the crescent or the idol that you see in a temple is a gross idol made up of earth, clay or wood or stone or gold or whatever it is made of. Fire is an idol. So 5 elements is what the world is. Any of the 5 can be converted into an idol. Space, air, fire, water and earth. All religions use fire as idol representing God. So in the ritual of Havan, there is a pilot fire into which offerings are poured slowly, carefully. If you dump the whole thing, it shuts off the fire. So very carefully it is done. And the priest goes about assembling it in such a way, the fire beautifully swells. You can sit around the fire and perform the ritual, but it doesn't meet with any accidents. So there is a way they do it so carefully, so meticulously. Before the yajna, what happens? After the yajna, what happens? After the yajna, the priest missed his bus. He is cursing the government. Can they not have more buses operated to the temple? Before the yajna, what is the thought association? Something else. So during the yajna in the temple, you are thinking of God. Before that and after that, the thought of God is gone. So Krishna here beautifully designs a possibility where you can be aware of the divinity 24/7. 24/7, you can't light fire outside and be aware. That's not possible. That was the way of life for some people. They all the time dedicated themselves to physical worship. Now, none of us are in that segment in life. So how to inwardly intute that fire, invoke the fire or the 12 yajnas. So consider the turf to be the body. The pilot fire inside you is the consciousness. The life spark is there in all of us. Offering, various types of offering are thrown or taken in from the world. Every time you offer something, there is a kindling, there is a response. So the human body itself is performing yajna all the time. You just have to understand how it is happening. So in this verse, he is talking about the sense perception, performing yajna by being aware of your sense perception. The first line is to be studied second. Second line is to be studied first. Others offer sound and other sense objects as sacrifice into the fires of senses. Now this is what we're going to take first. Others offer sound and other sense objects. Sense objects are of 5. Color and form for eyes, sound for ears, fragrance for nose, touch for skin, taste for tongue. 5 sense organs, 5 sense objects. So here he says, others offer sound, because as the teacher is speaking, we are already listening. So he is talking about something that is happening now. So he says, in slow motion, try to understand what is happening now. Forget the temple, forget the yajna, forget the priest, forget lighting fire outside. This is required in the initial stages. This will not help you 24/7. Because you go out of the yajna, all your world takes over. So irrespective of what you do in life, how to be aware of that consciousness is what he is talking about here. So others offer sound and other sense objects as sacrifice into the fires of senses. Fires of senses represents sense centers seated in the mind. Sound and other sense objects means the stimuli that is received from the world. The stimuli of color and form is received by your eyes. Stimuli of sound is received by your ears. Smell through nose. Taste through tongue. Touch through skin. So 5 ways in which the stimuli from the world enters your personality. Through the body, through the 5 gates in the body. So when the stimuli of color and form falls in your eyes, you don't see directly. This is only the starting point. Now I am speaking. My sound stimuli is reaching your ears. But hearing is not kindled here. Hearing is not happening here. If I ask you, where are your ears? You say, this is my pair of ears. This is only flesh. There are people in whom the ear is missing. They can still hear. This is not ear. This is just a flesh. Yet you say this is ears because this is the door to the ears. Like in an airport you say, this is Frankfurt, this is Toronto, this is New Delhi, this is New York. All 4 are aeroplanes. They're not cities. But when you say this is Frankfurt, if you board that plane, you go to Frankfurt. This is New York. If you board that, you go to New York. Same way when you say this is ears, this is not ears. This is just a flesh. So there are people in whom through accidents, this piece is lost. And plastic surgeons can help you fix it. And those ears are more beautiful than natural ears. So when you lost your ears, you have not lost your hearing, because there is something beyond the ears that is responsible for hearing. Someone can have very beautiful ears, but completely deaf. So this is not ears. What is ears then? The vibration inside. So there is a part that is inside your fleshy ears that is responsible for hearing. Okay, that is intact. The part inside is vibrating. Everything is intact. But mentally you are thinking of something. So the stimuli of sound is falling into your ears, but you are not hearing, you are not listening because your mind is elsewhere. So the stimuli has to pass through your ears, and the stimuli of sound has to get deposited into your mind. Corresponding to each and every sense organ, there is a sense center in the mind. See the chart. Object 1 is color and form. Object 2 is sound. Object 3 is fragrance. Object 4, O4, is taste. O5 is touch. So the sense perception is entering the eyes, ears, nose, tongue and skin. Corresponding to each and every organ, there is a sense center in the mind. When the perception gets deposited into the sense center, when the stimuli gets deposited into the sense center, if your mind is available, then you hear. You understand? This is why sometimes when the child is watching the video game, when it's playing the video game, mother is calling. 6 times I've called you. I am yelling at you. You have not heard. Mom, I didn't hear you. I don't think you called these days. 6 times you are yelling, shouting at the peak of your voice. The person has hardly heard because the sound vibration is entering the ears. It is passing through the nerves. It is reaching the sense center, getting deposited there, but mind is elsewhere. So what receives color and form through the eyes is your mind. What receives sound through your ears is the mind. What receives the taste through the tongue is your mind. So the mind is called as Indriyani Raja, means the ruler of senses, the enjoyer of senses. Now, how do you explain this concept to a child? That is why they said there is an Indra sitting there. If you want Aishwarya Rai's appointment, you go to the Bachchans. If you want Sushmita Sen's appointment, you go to her manager. But if you want appointment from all these people, you go to Indra, you will get it. Because he controls everything. He controls all the banks. He controls all the enjoyment in the world. So anything in the world you want, Indra, you pray for. And what is the definition of Indra? Indra means Indriyani Raja. Indra we tell children, but Indriyani Raja we don't know. Who is Indra? Indra means Indriyani Raja, the ruler of Indriyas. Indriyas means your senses. There is no place called Indra Loka somewhere, latitude and longitude. If it is there, NASA would have located by now. Trump would have sent an army by now to rule that also. So someone would have got it. Hitler could have got it. So our sages and saints are supposed to be reveling in Indra Loka. Not really in Indra Loka. What it means is they have controlled the mind. So every sense organ is their servant, not their master. So they enjoy life without becoming dependent. So going back to our mechanism, the sense perception passes through the sense organ. The sense organs, eyes, ears, nose, tongue and skin are called as golayas in Sanskrit. Golaya means fleshy organs, which a doctor can help replace. There are people who have gone through transplantation of eyes, eye transplant. 8 hours within a person's physical death, the eyes can be taken out and given to a person who doesn't have sight. But if the optic nerve is missing, the best of eyes you install, the person cannot see. So the golayas are only receiving lens. All the mechanism that you talk about, retina, everything is nothing but fleshy organ. It's a colony of cells with different functions. And then there are optic nerves inside the brain. Then the stimuli has to pass and hit the nerve center, the sense center in the mind. Your mind has to be available. If your mind is not available, you don't hear, you don't see, you don't taste, you don't feel the touch sensation, you don't smell. If your mind is elsewhere. So provided your mind is there, then the perception is kindled. So what is responsible for perception? Not the eyes or the ears, not the nerves that are connecting in the brain, not the sense centers, indriyas that are seated in the mind. It is the mind that has to be available. But mind is also an inert organ. Mind is also an inert equipment. What enlivens the mind? When the sense perception hits the mind, you say, I see, I hear, I taste, I sense the touch, I smell. Who's that I? Consciousness. So in every sense perception, the sense perception is the offering, the pilot fire is the consciousness, the trough is the body and the mind. When the perception gets deposited into the personality, what is kindled is I hear, I see, I taste, I smell, I sense. So this is kindling. So in every registration of perception, consciousness is enabling it. No perception is possible without that pilot fire of consciousness within. So whether you are seeing or hearing or smelling or tasting or touching, the whole thing is function of consciousness. So when you see something, you can get involved in what you see or remember that which makes you see. This is spirituality. When you get involved in what you see, you crave to possess and enjoy it. Alongside, if you remember that which makes you see, you become a witness to what you enjoy. You don't develop desires. So that is what he means. Others offer sound and other sense objects as sacrifice into the fires of senses. How is every sense center in the mind shooting out with various perception? Because of consciousness that is underlying. If consciousness is not there, the mind cannot claim, I am seeing through the eyes, I am hearing through the ears, I am smelling through the nose. All these are possible because consciousness backs the mind. That consciousness is God, not what you are conscious of. That which makes you conscious of is God, not what a person is conscious of. So this is called as yajna of perception. What is offered is the sense stimuli. What is kindled is perception. Second yajna here relates to yajna of self-restraint, which is the first line of the verse. Others offer hearing and other senses as sacrifice into the fires of restraint. Now again, if you read the sentence, we don't understand, but it is beautifully connected to the first. You are receiving sense perception. It is passing through the golayas. It is getting deposited into the indriyas, the sense center. The mind registers it. The consciousness backs and claims, I see, I hear, I taste, I smell, I touch. So you are invoking consciousness in every perception. You don't have to plan and go to Tirupati and invoke thought of God for 2 seconds. That God is what is making you plan your very visit to Tirupati, Balaji or Badrinath or Mecca, Jerusalem or wherever a person goes. The very trip is planned because of that God consciousness in you. So second part, he says, the tendency of mind is to associate with any perception and divide it. Anything that the mind meets, it has to divide. I like it, I dislike it. Whatever you like, you keep passing favorable thoughts towards it. Yesterday's food was very nice. Yesterday's food was very nice. And then next weekend you meet the same people for party. You say, this week's food is not so good like last week's food. Where did you get it catered from? Last week's food was very good, very good. You ate that food once. Your tongue registered it once. Your mind registered it once. But your mind got hold of it and reveling in it. This mental lingering in past perception creates fresh likes and dislikes. I like it. I want it more and more. You have got the desire. Your friend calls you for a party and say, are you catering from the same place? Yes, then I will come. No, we are ordering from the last month's caterer. No, I don't want to come. I hate that food. As far as mind is concerned, the perception of food was offered. But our mind has divided it into, I like it, I dislike it. Because of which it causes mental lingering. We linger favorably, we linger unfavorably. This lingering produces attachment and aversion. Someone shouted at you, but your mind keeps lingering at it for days and weeks together. You have developed a strong enmity towards the person. Talk to me, people say in this country. You talk and get it out. That's the worst thing you can do. Because when we talk about what happened last week, we are mentally reliving that. If something has happened to you and I tell you, talk to me, I'll get you out of it. That's the worst thing you can do. Of course, the person has to talk, but the person has to talk in such a way you don't mentally relive it. Where are people who know how to handle that? You know what he did? 20 years I was cooking breakfast, lunch and dinner for him. Suddenly he saw a secretary and he's filing for a divorce. You know what happened? As far as we are concerned, it is just news item. But as far as the lady is concerned, every time she talks about it, she is mentally reliving that agony. No doubt the person has to express and find a way out of it, but not mentally relive it. This mental reliving makes a person a victim. So you are victimized by your mental reliving of your past experiences. You are victimized by mental reliving of past unfavorable experiences. So the second yajna in this verse, yajna of self-restraint, says, when a sense perception enters you and it has reached the sense center, mind has received it, and you say, I hear, I see, I smell, I taste, I touch. If your intellect is available, you will say, that experience is gone. Now another experience is in front of me. You don't allow your mind to relive the past. You move from perception to perception. Perception ends with perception. There is no mental lingering. This is called self-restraint, self-control. Self-control doesn't mean blocking the perception. Self-control doesn't mean denying enjoyments. Self-control or self-restraint means you allow the perception to enter you, you experience that perception, but don't allow your mind to keep lingering in it again and again. The physical urge to procreate is natural to all human beings, all animals. Plants also procreate, but there is a big difference between plants, animals, and human. Animals, after they have completed the act of procreation, there is no mental lingering. You understand? So the male dog and the female dog will not say, hey, you remember yesterday we had fantastic time? There's no mental lingering. So what causes all the problem, breaks brahmacharya, self-control, is mind associating with pleasant and unpleasant. This increases the craving. So self-control doesn't mean blocking your sense enjoyment in life. That is self-denial, frustration. Self-control starts with moving from perception to perception. Animals don't linger mentally. Plants, there is no mind, forget it, no need to talk. Mental lingering creates an imaginary world in which we live. And this imaginary world destroys the person's life. So the comparison of reality is all the time with the imaginary world. You will always fall short. Because you have put so much of imagination into mind, no reality can match that. Therefore, he says, others offer hearing and other senses as sacrifice into fires of self-restraint. Hearing happens, see, minutely read the verse, usually 26 to 30 is covered in one class. I've seen my guru, at least 20 times I would have heard 12 yajnas, except in academy, everywhere he covers these 6 verses in one class. But in the academy, he goes verse by verse, word by word. It takes one full month to cover this topic because the students are ready for it. But I'll just give you a sample. In the second line, when he's talking about yajna of perception, he uses the word sound. Sound means you can hear or you can miss to hear. But in the first line, he uses the word hearing. Hearing means sound has deposited into you and the consciousness has kindled it. You're conscious of the sound. So others offer hearing means the sense perception and other senses, hearing, smelling, tasting, seeing, touching, the 5 sense perception into fires of restraint. How do they offer? they don't allow the mind to relive the past. So self-control means practicing two things. Not allowing the likes and dislikes of your mind to pressurize an action. It's not that you should not do what you like, but you don't allow the likes and dislikes to pressurize you. You evaluate with intellect and then decide. This is the starting point of self-control. Second is, having performed an action which is not propelled by likes and dislikes, you can mentally relive in that action. So when you mentally relive that action, when you mentally relive that perception, you are depositing fresh thoughts towards it. You're developing desires. So by allowing likes and dislikes and desires to propel action, you're increasing desires. By mentally reliving the action or enjoyment of past, you are furthering the desires. Two ways in which we become victims to our own mind. So two yajnas are given in this verse. Yajna of perception. What is offered is hearing and other stimuli. Sound and other stimuli. What is kindled is perception. Yajna number 4, yajna of self-restraint. What is offered is all the 5 perceptions. What is kindled is self-control. The person moves from one experience to the other without mental lingering. 2 yajnas. So totally 4 yajnas over with this verse. 27.
सर्वाणीन्द्रिय कर्माणि प्राण कर्माणि चापरे आत्मसंयम योगाग्नौ जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते
सर्वानीन्द्रिय कर्माणि प्राण कर्माणि चापरे आत्मसंयम योगाग्नौ जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते. Translation. Others sacrifice all the functions of the senses and the functions of vital airs into the fire of yoga of self-control, kindled by wisdom. Now again it continues. Yajna number 5, yoga of self-control is the yajna. Others sacrificed all the functions of senses and functions of vital airs into the fire of yoga of self-control, kindled by wisdom. So the last verse, if you read the translation, he used the word fires in plural, because 5 sense perception, 5 sense stimuli, 5 sense perception, 5, therefore plural, fires. Here he uses the word fire. Others sacrificed the functions of senses and functions of vital airs into the fire of yoga of self-control, kindled by wisdom. Indriya karmani, prana karmani, or the words in Sanskrit. Indriya karmani means organs of perception. Prana karmani means organs of action. Functions of organs of perception and functionings of organs of action. So when you engage the organs of perception and organs of action, you are extroverted. Your attention is upon the world. You are perceiving the world and acting in the world. So gathering the possibility of perceiving and acting in the world, which is extrovertedness, and depositing it into the fire of self-control kindled by wisdom is what he is talking about. What he is saying is, whether you are engaging your organs of perception or organs of action, your attunement with self-realization is never absent, is never gone. So all the extroverted participations in the world reminds you of the consciousness. It is plugged into that one goal of self-realization. The word self-realization is indicated by yoga of self-control. He doesn't use the word self-realization directly. But the implication is the phrase kindled by wisdom. Whose wise? A person who has turned one's attention within. Even if very successful, an extroverted person is a fool, because whatever he is going to earn, he is going to leave behind and go. So wisdom in spiritual context means a person who is focused on the spiritual wealth, on evolution. So he says, Indriya karmani, prana karmani. Whether you are perceiving the world through your organs of perception or functioning in the world through organs of action, which was covered in chapter 3, your focus is uninterrupted upon evolution, upon self-realization. So the whole thing is converged into one fire, one ideal, one goal, one purpose, which is evolution. Yoga of self-control, kindled by wisdom. So take the continuity, it becomes easier. Verse 26, the first is, sound and other sense stimuli is entering the golayas, getting deposited into the indriyas. When it reaches the mind, perception is kindled. It is not the mind that is responsible for perception. Mind is only a junction box. But what is responsible for perception is the consciousness. So consciousness is kindled whenever you see something, whenever you hear something, you can constantly be attuned to that consciousness within. This was previous verse. Now when you see something, when you hear something, you can participate in the world objectively or get involved. Objective participation means participating based on what is needed. Involvement means mentally reliving the past. So by mentally reliving the past, extending it into the future, you lose your self-control. These were the two yajnas given in the previous verse. 27, he says, it is an extension, it is furtherance of it. With this awareness, whether you act in the world using your organs of action or perceive the stimuli from the world using perception, your attunement with divinity is uninterrupted. Constantly you are thinking of evolution. Your purpose is never lost. Now how is it possible? It is like a transit passenger. Whether you are sitting in one place and perceiving what is happening in the airport, or to relax your limbs, you are walking the length and breadth of the airport, you are constantly remembering that you have another flight to catch. You should not get involved in the airport. You understand? So from Toronto to Frankfurt, Frankfurt to New Delhi. How can you constantly be aware while functioning in the world? You are doing it all the time. So in the Frankfurt airport, you are silently sitting and perceiving what others are doing. This is an introverted person. You're not introverted because you are too lazy or tired. You're sitting and watching what others are doing. This is perception. Watching a television news, it's perception. The other is another person says, hey, take care of my handbag. What are you doing? I'm going for a walk. My limbs are very stiff. My back is sore. I want to walk. So 2.5 hours transit time in the lounge, 1.5 hours he is only walking up and down. Everyone is perceiving that fellow. Walk. So whether you are walking up and down, which is organs of action, sitting in one place and watching a cricket match on the TV, which is perception, you never forget that you have a next flight to catch. This is not your abode. This is only your transit lounge. A fool forgets it, gets involved in walking, gets involved in the movie and misses the flight. All of us are fools when it comes to life. We get involved in this transit lounge called world and miss our flight connection to the reality. Therefore, he says, if wisdom kindles you, you'll remember it. If desire kindles you, you'll be lost in the world. That's why he says, the fire of yoga of self-realization has to be kindled by wisdom. You have to gain that knowledge. You have to have that awareness, or else it is not possible. 28.
द्रव्ययज्ञास्तपो यज्ञाः योगयज्ञास्तथा परे
स्वाध्यायज्ञानयज्ञाश्च यतयः संशितव्रताः द्रव्ययज्ञास्तपो यज्ञाः योगयज्ञास्तथा परे स्वाध्यायज्ञानयज्ञाश्च यतयः संशितव्रताः. 28. Yet others again offer wealth as sacrifice, yoga as sacrifice. Ascetics of rigid vows offer study and wisdom as sacrifice. Now there are three transactions of life. One is receipt, second is reaction, third is response. Receipt of stimuli from the world, reaction inside the mind, response to the world. This is traffic of life for every human being. We are receiving the stimuli from the world, and according to the stimuli and the contents of mind in us, there is reaction. I like it, I don't like it, I want it, I don't want it. And then based on the mental reaction and intellectual stability, you respond. I like it, but I'm not going to eat it. This is a response. I dislike it, but I'm going to do it because it's right for me to do it. This is a response. So, notwithstanding your likes and dislikes and reaction, if you are able to respond to the world, respond in your life, this is called as responsibility. Responsibility means your ability to respond with your intellect, not react with your mind. So three transactions of life: receipt of stimuli, reaction within, which was covered in the previous two verses. Since stimuli is received, it is getting deposited to the mind, perception is kindled. When the perception is kindled, you don't get involved in that perception. You move once the perception is over to the next. From that, you keep moving. So you don't get mentally stuck in the past. There is no mental lingering. If you have to visit the past, you visit it with your intellect, consciously, thoughtfully, with awareness. Your mind doesn't drag you into the past. So this is what he called as self-restraint. If you are able to engage your organs of perception and organs of action, indriya karmani, prana karmani, in this way, you will reach realization. It's a matter of time. Now, how to do that? You have to be kindled by wisdom. Now all of us are kindled by desires and attachment. It won't work. Innumerable desires and attachment. One more desire for God, one more attachment to Ganesha. So just as we have mundane desires and attachment, we have spiritual desires and attachment. I have listened to Bhagavad Gita. What does Kenopanishad say? It's a spiritual desire. Another desire, that's all. So you have to be kindled by wisdom, not by desires. Then it will happen, he said. So kindled by wisdom is not reacting. Your response starts. When you are kindled by wisdom, how will you function in the world is what he is giving here. So in the world, your attitude will be yajna, not aggrandizing and accumulating, exploiting others. You will not think about what you can get. You will think about what you can leave here. Now, what you can leave? There are 4 things that you can perform as yajna. Dravya yajna. Dravya means grains, translated as wealth. Grains because land, cattle, grain were considered wealth in those days. Agricultural land, which brings grains, and based on the land, you raise cattle. That was considered wealth. When I lived in the Middle East, it's a common term. You say Sheikh, Sheikh. Sheikh Zayed, Sheikh Nahyan, say Sheikh. and I tried to find out what the word shake means. Shake, you're a big shake or what? Just like that, you're buying a birthday gift and giving everyone. So what do you mean by the word shake? Because shake means we think extremely rich, prosperous person. Try to find out. Google and find out what does the word shake mean. When I came to know what the word shake means, I said, I am a sheikh already. So what does the word sheikh mean? It's a yardstick of one's wealth. And how wealthy you have to be called a sheikh. Google and find out. If not, I'll tell you next class. So grains, dravyam means grains. Grains today is wealth. So you can do yajna. Yajna means attributing your resources to a higher cause. Attributing your personal resources, not neighbor's resources. When you're standing in neighbor's lawn, someone says, is it okay if I take one apple? Yeah, take 15, 20. Because it's in neighbor's tree, you're not bothered. Not giving neighbors your personal resources, when you attribute it to an impersonal cause, it's called yajna. Now, what are things that you can attribute to an impersonal cause? The first is wealth, he says. It is not only the first, it is the grossest. Grossest means the lowest is wealth. Charity of wealth. When you say Swamiji is coming to Toronto, Sunandaji is invited for Gita lectures, let's all work together as a team. Okay, sir, what is the project cost? $10,000. Okay, I'll give you $1,000. This is yajna of wealth. Dravya yajna means attributing your personal financial resources to a higher cause. I'll give $1,000. Will you put my name there? That's not yajna. You are buying advertisement. You are not doing yajna. Yajna means you are inspired to invest your personal resources for a social cause. The question is, why should I do that? The very fact you are enjoying everything is because someone else has done it. Today we have a temple, a community center in this country because someone else has come and built it for you, not for them. Roads are made, not for people, for every one of us. The mother's body releases milk as soon as the baby exits the womb, not before, not 3 months later. Now, how exactly the hormones function, where it triggers, the moment the baby emerges from the womb, milk is available for it. Every aspect of life is ready to serve you. Oxygen is there everywhere. When you next time visit a patient in a hospital with oxygen cylinder, oxygen is there everywhere. You are breathing. That fellow is not able to breathe. You don't need a cylinder. So every aspect of world is serving you. Only a human being asks this question, why should I serve others? Most selfish attitude. Those people will be stressed and strung. So he says, if you want to change this attitude, the first thing that you do is dravyam, wealth, any resources, material resource. The second is dravya yajna, tapo yajna. Tapas means austerity. I don't know whether I can cut a check and give you $1,000, but when you arrange these lecture starts at 6. What time you go and set up everything? I go there at 2:30 and start setting up the floor. I will come and help you, says someone. He says, I will come and help you. I'll set up the speakers. I'll set up the mic. I'll clean the floor. I'll arrange the chairs. I will do all the physical activity that is required. We will save some money there. This is called tapo yajna. Tapo yajna means investing not your material resources, but your physical resources. You are investing more. You are moving closer. We may conveniently say, I won't give any money, but if you want, I will do physical work. Everyone does physical work. So, dravya yajna means charity or yajna of wealth. The second is tapo yajna, which is physical effort. Third is Yoga Yajna. Yoga Yajna means serving from the level of mind and intellect. One of my childhood friends has gone through a surgery, tumor for cancer. His wife called and said, the doctor said the surgery is over. From now on, it is his mind. He has to fight it out with his mind. He can stay in the hospital for next 10 days if he can afford. But according to me, he can go home in 2 days. Now he has to fight it out with his mind. He has to feel he is normal. Medically, everything is all right. He can start getting up. So much of aches and pains, so much of problem because he has gone through a surgery. A tumor has been removed from his intestine. So the wife called and said, Ranga, I said, what do you want? Do you want Vedanta lecture? She said, no, we don't want any Vedanta lecture. I know you are his closest friend. And the moment he sees your phone call, he is so excited. Can you gather 3 or 4 friends, school friends? So one fellow is in North Carolina, another fellow is in Bangalore, third fellow is in Hyderabad. So 6 of us on a Zoom call. For 1.5 hours, we were chatting school stories. The school clubs are there, WhatsApp groups and all that. People, my own friends, they call. I said, individually you want to speak, you will call and chat. But this group, 3rd standard group, 4th standard group, because there are some fellows who exited after 4th standard. There are some who exited after 10th standard. So you have to be part of 18, 20 groups. Throughout the night, it keeps on ringing because someone is sharing something. So I said, no groups, no nothing, man. Leave it. So 5, 6 of us got together and reluctantly talking about school jokes. Mental lingering, this is called. What happened in 3rd standard? What happened in 5th standard? What happened with the science teacher? What happened with the sports master? What happened with the volleyball coach? All that for 1.5 hours. And then what I heard from her is, she called and said, Ranga, after chatting with you, he was so exhausted. Today he slept without a sleeping pill. Last 2 days the doctor gave sleeping pill. But today, now he is fast asleep, snoring. If you can call every other day and engage him, he'll mentally feel better, he said. So the wife understood that emotional service is required. You understand? So you don't say, I am a Vedanta student, I am a teacher. I don't deal with past. I don't talk about 3rd standard, 4th standard. Those bridges are crossed in life. Nor you say, I am a CEO of a bank. How stupid it is to talk about school. That too on a Zoom. So very well understanding, any day you could be in that bed having operated. It is a service without assumption of any ego or arrogance. So what are you serving? You can say, I will take 50% of your hospital bill. He doesn't need that. You can say, I will come and give you massage. He doesn't need that. He has a wife. But what he needs is a mental, emotional distraction. It is service. So when a person is in grief, listening to that person is service. But our mind is judgmental. It says, I know you are in this trouble. I've been telling you. 8 years I've been warning you. You go through law of karma says, you reap what you sow. I have studied in Vedanta. This is disservice. So yoga yajna at the level of mind is, emotionally can you be receptive and accommodative? That person may be wrong, that person may be immature, that person may be stupid, but are you able to live with that emotionally? This is yoga yajna. With the intellect, it is giving intelligence. Imparting a terrestrial knowledge to benefit another person. You teach mathematics free, you teach science free, you teach geography free, you teach something free because you have made your life. There are young boys and girls who don't have that education. There are so many people who are doing that. Retired IIT professors, CEOs of companies, for no personal profit. They are giving their intellectual knowledge to benefit another person. Not for any reputation, not for any remuneration. So yoga yajna means giving from the level of your mind and intellect. Final is swadhyaya jnana yajna. Adhyaya means practice. Swadhyaya means self-study and practice. Swadhyaya jnana yajna means the highest yajna is you sit and study the realities of life, the laws pertaining to life and living. Now, sitting inside your room and serving, you're not giving wealth, you're not doing physical service, you're not sharing emotions, you're not giving intelligence, you're only sitting and studying at home. How is it the highest service? Because study of Vedanta cleanses your selfishness. You can give wealth, but be selfish and say, what will I get out of it? You can physically serve, and then 2 weeks later you can say, I have a party in my house, you come and reciprocate. So the whole service is done in the background of selfishness. Swadhyaya Jnana Yajna means, in that yajna, what is offered is ignorance, what is kindled is knowledge. So 4 yajnas are covered here. Dravya Yajna, Yajna of wealth. Tapo Yajna, Yajna of austerity. Yoga Yajna, Yajna of mind and intellect. Swadhyaya Jnana Yajna, which is the spiritual sacrifice. By cleansing yourself, you can inspire others to live that life. That's a guru. So we have covered halfway mark, recit, reaction, response. 29 and 30 are very simple, which we'll cover next class. You must study this commentary. This commentary by Swami Parthasarathy for 12 yajnas, because no other commentary explains it. No other commentator has experienced it in life, therefore they have not explained it. I may sound fanatic, that's the truth. Unless you have practiced this sadhana, you can't explain this. It's only explained in the commentary of Swami Parthasarathy, no other commentary. So you've got to get hold of the commentary and start reading yourself, or else this is just an intellectual entertainment. Any question? Continue in the next class. Thank you. Next class will be on Wednesday. Hari Om.